Hello, I'm Em, and today we're going to talk about how to make NPCs more memorable in your role-playing campaign. What makes a strong impression on players and, well, viewers and consumers of all kinds of media alike is a strong feeling of a successful person and personality, or just a remarkable one. Now, I know that saying a remarkable one is quite a bit vague, but we can quantify this if we think back to the ones that had stood the test of time, that we consider our favorites from books and shows and campaigns years and years later, decades even. If you, for example, take Tom Sawyer, he's still an archetype of playful, brash, young adventurer, even a century and more after. And that's because even that much later, all can agree that this is such a great character that invites this feeling very readily over the course of his story and is quite impactful. So therefore the book is classic, and many people still read it and enjoy the character and enjoy all the adventures he gets up in. Therefore, we want to build out a sort of a strong set of characters that we consider our favorites and remember them. Now, we're not gonna just straight up copy them or something like that. No, we're just going to take their attributes, their virtues, their quirks, and we're gonna see what makes them so memorable to us, whether it's how they speak, how they act, what they did, what are their accomplishments, and their attitude most of all, and how does it show itself to the others that view the character. How does this character act in front of others? How does this character act when he or she is alone? And how do they feel? How do they feel internally? What are their motivations, their internal monologues, the things that make them who they are? And now that we have trained a while in collecting a group of attributes that we can pick out for any individual archetype in multiple ways, in multiple directions, we will sort of have a feeling of how to build up to one. So then when you say need a sea captain, then you can pull up almost a graph of what does an impactful sea captain look like, and how did you perceive them, and what do you need to do to make it happen. And don't worry, everybody does it. Even highly acclaimed pros do it. Making that palette from the previous examples and putting additional attributes on and decreasing something, increasing something. For example, from the 80s series Captain Global in Robotech Macro Saga, that somebody liked so much that later on we have, probably inspired by him heavily, Nadia's Secrets of the Blue Water, Captain Nemo. And then we even have him as a cruiser captain in classic original StarCraft, because that's how impactful the idea was. But of course, you shouldn't think of your characters as versions of each other. You should dig deep into your consciousness of what they are and who they are and build their attributes from within, just reminding yourself of the successes that you know. And that way you'll be able to do it on the fly after some, time of sort of doing it on the fly for yourself, as in training. And don't be shy to train whilst you lead, whilst you run the campaign, because that's how you'll get really better. Just relax and do it. And if you make some sort of stutter or a pause or a mistake, just say, sorry, just give me a second, I'll fix that, and keep doing it, because that's how you become any sort of performer, really. Otherwise, you're not gonna push yourself into doing it, and if it's too pressuring, take it slow, I suppose. Now, to achieve further impact by characters' presence and story and mannerisms and so on, we should remember that they're part of a world that is different than this one, and we should remember that their mannerisms should reflect this. They can afford to be more grandiose or more relaxed or more magnanimous or even more scheming, because their intelligence, their memory capacity, their ability to empathize are all perhaps higher than what averagely you may think you meet on the street, though who knows really. But at any rate, in this world that we probably have a higher standard for people to an extent. We want them to reflect this. We want to reflect this more serious, more wondrous, more impactful world with actions that are born from them living in it for a while and feeling how it sort of plays out, and therefore acting on it. These are both small and subconscious mannerisms and large and deliberate ones. So keep this in mind and work at it with delicate touch. However, you might wonder, how do these people not become Mary Sues if they have such grand successes and grand personality and yet barely a flaw to them? And, well, we can remember that players frequently will find flaws with everything, for one thing, even if you don't intend it to, so flaws will sort of exist. Also, you should think from the realistic position of the character and see what kind of things bother them, what kind of things are they challenged by, and what kind of personality quirks are not letting them get over themselves, because all of us have some internal strife that we need to deal with, but even if we had less so, we would still have some and we would be dealing with it. So do they. And then when you sort of simulate this and figure out what makes them tick, you can run them more realistically and show their human side as well. As for the Mary Sueishness, well, they need to earn where they are. Also, you need to describe players just as grandly, so that the players feel that they are now standing in the boots of such great people where their talent is obvious to these other NPCs that will, well, show how they feel that these are people of their caliber, or maybe even greater. And you probably need good role players to pick up on this, but they'll see that they are treated with just as much impact and respect as much as the others, and perhaps more so, therefore putting them in the spotlight. And once they're able to compare themselves, they may rise to the occasion and actually act according to such grand new standing in the grand new world. And then you have players that are having characters that fit in and therefore won't consider any people in their surroundings as Mary Sue-esque as they would have otherwise, and you shouldn't overforce anything anyways. So when you see that your players like a character sufficiently that they want more of them, that is when you can emphasize a little bit more, and rather than making them stand and posture, they need to be effective or useful or contributive, and yet not steal the spotlight. How do you achieve this? Well, treat them as one of the players. So you need to divide this equally over the party. And then they don't need to stay with the party all of the time. They have their work, they have their responsibilities, so they are absent maybe a third of the time, or quarter of the time, or even half of the time, or maybe even frequenter than that. It depends on the campaign and the tone, because in Slice of Life maybe there'll be more interaction between them on a daily basis than if it was some sort of rushed Save the World campaign or something like that. But who knows? Maybe they're very close. Don't shy away from letting players attach themselves to the other characters. They can form even extended party and have a great time, because don't forget, many games do this and they do it successfully if they just put the effort of fleshing out the person with enough depth and so on. But whilst it's rarely done sufficiently in games, you have here the opportunity to just go with this quite a bit, and then you don't need to waste as much time and effort on less relevant characters. There's lots of story that you can have amongst your party when half of your party is, in case of a small party, half of your party is characters that you run in order to create sort of perfect party dynamics, if you will. Now, this needs an episode all of its own, so I'll do it later, but bear in mind that this is doable. And if you want to practice, you can just run a pet, like a dog, in the first place to test it out and see how it goes when the character has little to no chance of stealing the spotlight too much. Furthermore, let's remember two things. Talent and good solutions still win the day. So everything feels balanced, because if everybody is contributing equally, they will be greatly rewarded by everybody praising them. And if they aren't, well, the non-player characters that aren't will sort of fade away from the spotlight. Whilst the players that don't, the player characters that don't, will perhaps be encouraged by their friends or the surroundings. You can tell them to get in the robot, and that's also one way to run a campaign, I suppose, if the player is a bit shy but also tough enough a role player. If you don't know what I'm referring to, it's a Neon Genesis Evangelion reference, where Shinji, the protagonist, is a meek boy, but his surroundings really want him to be in the spotlight, and so he shall, or else the world will fall, I suppose. I don't recommend this for all things. In fact, I never did this, but it could be successful with a shy player when you're running one-on-one or one-on-two, which I recommend small parties actually for most form of roleplay. It's better for schedule and it's better for narrative purposes, because you can better take care of the needs of the fewer players. And if you have more friends, split the group into two groups, and if you have the time, you can lead both. And if you don't have the time, well, then you can have a classical bigger group, but that's only when you don't have other choices, really. And finally, the most important thing. If somebody is doing something bad, something ineffective, something inefficient, or something that just messes with the world, well, it's not that good always wins, but if somebody is not fitting from these non-player characters within the truth of the world, within what the world needs to function, they'll probably be eliminated by other powers just as competent. Think of it as sort of a market or a meta, where if somebody has delusional ideas, no matter how grand they are, they get eliminated sooner or later, even if the players don't succeed to do it. Sometimes this even feels to the players as a competing system, because it should, because it is. And this makes it all feel dramatically more realistic, because now we're simulating that higher end system where things aren't happening just coincidentally, but all the characters respond to the actions of all the other characters as long as they concern them. And as such, you will even get that karmic balance that people like to feel subconsciously, and players will feel happier and they'll feel like there's consistency to your world, which means that they'll trust you more, which means that they'll build more on what you provide for them, and everybody will be happy. Well, I wish you luck on your adventures, and if you thought this was unique, maybe spare a like or a click. And I would love to see you here next week. Bye.